A big welcome to Ian Stewart, my old boss and founder member of Gremlin Graphics, which later became Gremlin Interactive. So, where did it all start, Ian?
Yeah, it all started when I worked for a company called Lasky's. I was a retail manager, and they were one of the first high street retailers to introduce computers onto the high street, together with Dixon's. And as with Dixon's, they were good at selling hardware, but they were no good at selling software. So I then decided to give up my company car, etc., and open a shop called Just Micro in Sheffield, which became a bit of a haven for gamers and young bedroom programmers. And that's from that, we got chatting to the guys, and we decided to launch our own label, which was Gremlin.
So when you're working for Lasky's, obviously it was a really sort of small computer industry back then. You're obviously confident enough to go and sell games, but what sort of inspired you? Were you into gaming yourself at the time?
No.
No.
I'd no. To be honest with you, it was. I think it was probably watching the kids coming into Lasky's and playing and writing small games for the MZ80K, and then they went on to write a few early Spectrum games, etc. And it was evident from the times we were getting asked for software that there was a demand there, and the demand wasn't going to go away. It was only going to grow.
Yeah. So Just Micro, when did you take the plunge? When did you decide to take the plunge to start hiring people to actually make games?
Oh, it's probably in '83. Yeah, 83. So yeah, a couple of years into Just Micro.
Yeah.
So the market was moving so quickly at that time. The Spectrum was going great guns. There's a lot of buzz around it. BBC Model B was introduced at schools, and kids were getting interested in coding. So we more or less took advantage of that. And Just Micro was a great place. It was a bit smelly on Saturdays when it was heaving in there. It was only a very very small shop.
Yeah.
And you've got all these young lads coming in. Yeah, it did get rather warm in there.
So who were the first employees that you had in game development?
Oh, in game, let me think now. It was probably Peter Harrop would have been the first one. Monty Mole, 40 years old, together with the miners' strike, was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's also the Spectrum's 40th anniversary.
Of course.
So it would have been Pete, and from that it grew. Some people that some other people that we knew, a guy called Sean Hollingworth, Chris Kerry. Yeah, I can't remember all the names now, but it was good times. It was interesting times because we were making it up as we were going along. Really, there was nothing really to guide us in any way, apart from other software companies that were that started a little bit earlier than us. Companies like Imagine over in Liverpool and such likes.
When you were making games up there, did you all sit together and sort of design games, or was it more individual? Each person came in with their own ideas, or was it a bit of a mixture?
It was a bit of a mixture. I as you know, I'm not a coder. I never was a game designer, but I was okay on concepts. I'd come up with the ideas, plant the seeds, and let the guys run with it, or they'd come up with ideas and we'd discuss them and take. Development was a far shorter. It took far less time than it does now. We're talking about months, not years. So it was quite hectic getting one game out and then straight onto the next one, etc., etc. Exciting times.
I always felt Gremlin never got the recognition they deserved really for innovation because there was a lot of games out there that, especially in the the early days, things like Bounder and Thing on a Spring,
Mhm.
that were really really groundbreaking for the time, weren't they?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. That was, that was down to a good group of lads.
Yeah.
The Thing on a Spring was Jason Perkins, and Bounder was the Derby crew with Chris Shrigley and Andy Green,
Hmm.
Rob Toon, Terry Lloyd. They all added to it, and they were the sort of founding members really of the success that Gremlin did have, and they were good games.
Yeah.
Good games. As to why they didn't make it as big as some others, or we didn't get the recognition, I I don't know. We did okay.
So, well, going back to Monty Mole, I first became aware of that like a lot of people. I think I was only a kid, and I was watching Calendar, the news program for Yorkshire, the Yorkshire area, and there was a story about Monty Mole the game. It was during the miners' strike, obviously, so it was sort of a big news thing in the area. So how did that get onto the news? Did you call up the did you call up the news company and just let them know about the game, or?
No, I think the way it worked at that time, there was a piece in the Star newspaper.
Hmm.
Uh, Calendar picked up on it, and then the major TV channels picked up on it as well.
Yeah.
We ended up with "And Finally," uh, which was, that's something I would treasure for the rest of my life, to have one of the "And Finally" on news at 10. It was great. I think we
So
replaced. I think the day before there was "And Finally" was a stick insect in Norfolk that was about 8 inches long.
right. Well, the development for that game, it started before the miners' strike, I think, didn't it? Just a
It did, yeah.
coincidence. Yeah.
But Pete Harrop was the son of a miner,
Hmm.
uh, and it all sort of, yeah, all sort of got mixed up in it slightly. It wasn't intentional, of course.
Well, did you
Yeah,
have you seem to have a really good relationship with games magazines at the time?
yeah, yeah. No, I think that was always very important, because
Hmm.
especially the people down at Newsfield and EMAP,
Yeah.
um, uh, it was critical to get them on side.
Yeah.
Um, However, they were very honest. If you had a bad game, they'd tell you. You
Yeah.
know, but sometimes you've got to take criticism on the chin and go back and maybe change things a little, or
Yeah.
just fly with it anyway. But no, I think for us at that time, probably Newsfield was the biggest influencer in the market. So that's the Crash magazine, Zap 64.
Yeah.
Great guys.
Hmm. It must have been strange for you to move from retail into sort of managing a computer games development team. So I mean, you obviously managed really well, but what sort of challenges did it bring?
Um, yeah, working with programmers, no
Yeah.
challenges at all. No, there are some unusual people in the programming spheres, etc. Um, I think I sort of grew into it. I suppose I
Hmm.
began to understand um, what motivated them, and what you needed to do if they were having a difficult time with certain code, etc., etc. So,
Hmm.
for me, it was all very new, but don't forget, it was probably all pretty new for them as well.
Yeah.
So it was a case of sort of always being there to encourage and support, and hopefully I did that. I like to think I did, right the
Hmm.
way through until the later days.
Yeah. Well, you were one of the first companies to dabble with licensing deals, things like Gary Lineker and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Was it easier back then, do you think, than later years, than to do that sort of thing?
Uh, well, there were less people after the licenses. The
Hmm.
expectations were lower.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was easier. It was because it was all new to these people.
Yeah.
They hadn't had these revenue streams previously, so we opened up new revenue streams for them.
Yeah. And sticking on the 8-bit days just for a little while. So have you got any favourites that Gremlin made? Any 8-bit games?
Yeah, I suppose you can't get away from Monty Mark because he was the one that kicked everything off. But I think for me it was the ones that I could play. not being a wonderful games player, it is always good to pick up something and be able to at least get through the first level or around the first tracks or whatever. But Thing on a Spring, Bounder, they were my early favourites. But you can't get away from the products like Supercars and then the Lotus trilogy. They did very well on 8-bit as well as on 16-bit. But no, there are probably too many.
Yeah.
And some quirky ones. Jack the Nipper.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, a guy called Greg Holmes came down to work with us. A lovely guy, a young man, but he was then anyway. 40 years on. It was just quirky. We weren't concerned about going out on a limb slightly and doing something, working with products that are a little bit different. Some of them did okay, some of them didn't. But that was the risk you took. But it's not the type of risk that people would take today. The cost of producing them was far less than any products, even mobile products, are today.
Yeah. Well, you survived the moving to 16-bit. A lot of companies didn't. How did the market change when 16-bit and disc-based games come out?
Products got more expensive to make.
Yeah.
It's obviously taking longer. You had more memory, high resolution graphics. The risk, I suppose the risk got a bit higher. And people who didn't move away from 8-bit quick enough were probably the ones that didn't survive.
Yeah.
But we embraced it. We had good relationships with Commodore. Guys down there always supported us. We supported them by putting products in pack, etc., etc. And along came Zool.
Zool, yeah. So, well, that was one of the bigger games on 16-bit, wasn't it? So, tell us about how did that come about?
You know what? I can't remember exactly how it came about, but I was involved in the original, with the original design with an artist called Aid Carlis, and it just evolved. It evolved into, we wanted to produce something that would compete with Sonic. That wasn't Sonic, that could do more things, etc. A different character, but more importantly, we wanted to try and create a world for the character to go into, which I think we succeeded in to a certain degree. And Commodore adopted it as one of the games that was sort of up against Sonic, which was good for us. It was bundled in with the hardware, etc. So, yeah. It was great. My number plate is still Zool.
Is it?
I've had it for years. S2200L.
Right, got you.
Yeah, it's a bit naff, I suppose, really.
I saw an arcade machine down at Calver House as well, the Zool arcade machine.
Yeah.
Did that ever get put out into the public?
I think a few went out, but not much. We did have a relationship with a manufacturer in, I think it was Nottingham, and they put a few out, but it wasn't particularly. I don't think it was particularly successful, because arcade machines were sort of ahead. They were ahead of the 16-bit market anyway.
Yeah.
And I think by the time it got out, it just didn't compete at the level where the arcade manufacturers had got to by that time.
Yeah.
I think there's still a few about.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there might be one in the Games Museum in Sheffield.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back in time yet again, sorry. So quite early on in Gremlin's history, you got Jeff Brown as part of the team, and he had links with Centresoft, didn't he? So what did that bring in terms of distribution to the company?
Well, Jeff and his wife Anne owned a company called Centresoft.
Yeah.
But they also were partners in US Gold, which was a partnership with the guys at Ocean.
Yeah.
John Woods and David Ward. It obviously helped us get take the next step. But I think what happened then was, whilst we had a few good years of growth, and we were actually doing some conversion work on things like Gauntlet for US Gold, etc., and some Disney product. It sort of conflicted with what Jeff wanted to do with US Gold, and in the end, we bought the company back out and brought it back to Sheffield. I lived in Birmingham for a few years, which is where the Centresoft US Gold head office was. And they were good years, but it just didn't work out, and so we struck up an agreement and brought the company back to Sheffield. And that was the best thing we did.
Yeah.
We still had the Sheffield offices, obviously.
Yeah.
But at that time, we also had offices in Derby, in Birmingham, Lincoln. Yeah, it was growing. It was growing fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, the next step up was the move to consoles, because obviously the console market really opened up, and it's another step that Gremlin survived, which a lot of the competitors couldn't. So how difficult was it to move on to console with all the expense that it brings?
I don't remember it being that difficult.
Yeah.
I do remember the fact that Sony, who were our main partner, who we built a really good relationship with. We actually had one of the first third-party games in Loaded. They were very supportive, and obviously it was fairly new for them as well. So it was interesting times, but it went fantastically well. It really did. We didn't really struggle with stepping up to producing console product. By this time, we'd got experienced developers on board, and experienced managers on board, which actually ensured that we had the resources to tackle the product.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us about the actual brand. So was that sort of a piss take on the Virtua games?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, unashamedly. Unashamedly. Yeah, it was, I think that was some of the best stuff we did, actually, as far as 16-bit was concerned. And the early console stuff. And of course, with the products that we were producing, we were one of the first companies to use motion capture within the products.
Yeah.
And on Actual Soccer, Michael Owen came up and did we did the capture with Michael Owen for that product. which was great. It was before it was when he was a young lad, so he
Mm.
wasn't particularly noticed at that time, but he very soon was. But no, there were some really good products. They're always enjoyable products to do. Not easy at all.
Mm.
And the guys that would have worked on them would have, backed that up. But I think we had some good products there. I'm disappointed that the brand didn't keep going, but I had no control over that at that time. It was after we'd floated the company and sold the company to Atari, or to Infogrammes, who'd just been bought by Atari at that time. Or they bought Atari, one of the two. They were buying everybody anyway. It was, the story then gets a bit muddy for me.
Right, okay. Well, going back to the motion capture, how difficult was it to set up that at Gremlin?
But it wasn't easy. We ended up having a complete studio built at the greenhouse.
Mm.
And I can't remember the name of the company that supplied the capture equipment now, but they were very supportive, because obviously it was early days for them as well.
Yeah.
They were looking to get into film, into video games, etc., etc. It was a case of when you're that early into a market, you've got to make things up as you go along.
Yeah.
And I don't think we made a bad fist of it, really.
Yeah. Yeah, you had a good relationship with the Sheffield Wednesday players as well, didn't you? Because was it Kevin Pressman and
yeah, there were a few of them came in, and Sheffield Sharks. We tried to tie in the local people and get their services recorded, and and one of my good mates was who was a professional golfer on the European tour. He did the capture for the golf games. Chap called Neil Cheetham.
Yeah.
They were good times. But around about that time, I was unfortunately having less to do with the games and more to do with the business.
Yeah.
So I was sort of stepping back a bit at that time. So I was looking at a lot of stuff from from a distance.
Yeah.
But still making a nuisance of myself.
Well, it was around about that time that you purchased Imagitech Design and DMA Design. So what was the thought process there? What did they add to the company, do you think?
It was resources, basically. Well, it was resources with Imagitech.
Yeah.
And they were close. They were in Dewsbury, so it wasn't too far to travel. We knew them. They'd done some work for us, and that was an easy one. With the DMA Design, it was what was really interesting as far as I was concerned was their creativity. They'd already proven that they could produce products that were innovative, and not only that, they were very, very sellable. We actually acquired them whilst I think they were about halfway through Grand Theft Auto at that time. But they'd already sold the product to the BMG group, who were trying to get into video games in a big way. Didn't quite make it. They ended up selling out to Take-Two, and Take-Two have held the product since. But it was one of those ones where I think I can remember someone saying, I didn't sign Dire Straits, but I had a chance. And also was that it was a sort of missed opportunity, but not of our own volition, because the product was already sold. So
yeah.
But the guys up in DMA and Dundee they were great. I loved going up there.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to there myself actually as part when I worked for you. We had a couple of days up there. That was a really nice office. So the flotation, was that basically just the next step in the evolution of the company, do you think?
It was necessary to raise capital to take us to the next stage,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why you would do something like that.
Yeah.
Was it right for us? I think it probably was, rather than take private investment. But the market was fairly unsure of video games, so it was tough. It was hard work,
Mm.
but we'd made the decision. We're on the market, and um, the you know we did what we needed to do.
Yeah. So that also made you vulnerable to people coming after the shares like Infogrammes and Atari. So do you have any regrets at all about
Um,
that? Sorry.
yes, and no. I thought the decision that we made with the sale to Infogrammes was going to lead the company to bigger and better things. Unfortunately, Infogrammes then ran into trouble, and it meant that the company was lost. They closed it down, as they did with Ocean and other companies, etc.
Yeah.
Which was really sad. And that, for me, I'd already stepped back at that stage. Because you probably know the story, but when after the sale was agreed, I took my daughter to the US to take her skiing and then to go on to Disneyland. We never made it to Disneyland because I had a heart attack up top of a mountain in Salt Lake City,
Oh, wow.
which sort of slowed me down a little bit.
Just a bit.
Following a quadruple bypass then, and a flight home on Concorde, which was wonderful, but I don't remember a thing about it. When I got back, things had changed so much. Some of the stuff that I'd agreed with them, with what was happening with the company, wasn't coming about, and it just wasn't. They'd already made changes, and it was something I couldn't step back into.
Yeah.
And by the looks of it, I was right not to do that, because the Infogrammes of the company didn't survive. So it was difficult, because what would have happened if I hadn't made that decision? You just don't know.
Yeah.
The decision was made. I had some health problems, and that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. I'm still here today, so sort of 30 years on, or 25.
It's a fantastic heritage, though, isn't it? I mean, if you just look at I was Googling all the games just to remind myself, and there's pages and pages of titles under the Gremlin, banner.
Yeah.
And there's some classic ones as well. I mean, the Premier Manager series as well. There's
You can't forget that. It's really ridiculously, it still sells today.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to buy the license, just give me a call. To do with a new product.
Well, you keep a lot of the IPs, don't you? You still own a lot of the IPs.
I do.
How did you acquire those, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, well, when Infogrammes closed down, I approached. I'd started in another company, and that company was called Zoom Media Corporation, and it was one that was a .com company that was started, where we then went into the bus time, and we needed to move the business into another area, and we did that by moving Zoom Media Corporation, that was predominantly a web-based company,
Yeah.
back into games. And at that time, they were closing all the offices. The Sheffield office of Gremlin was being closed, and I spoke with David Ward and asked him if I could acquire the IP back, and that's what I did.
Mm.
And it's sort of followed me about ever since.
Well, tell us about, because you have a company now, Urban Scan.
Yeah.
And you're still working on the product, aren't you?
We still got a Hogs of War refresh going on, which it is lovely because the Hogs of War was the last product that I conceived before I left the company.
Mm.
And I never saw it through to its bitter end, which was a bit of a shame. But there's some funny stories that go about saying how it was conceived, etc. None of them are true. Something about me watching Babe or something on television. I thought, oh, we want to go with pigs. No, that never happened. I don't know who made that up. Yeah, but no, it was one it was always fairly close to my heart because it was the last product that I conceived together with the team at the greenhouse. And I started doing some work with Jake Campgood at Sheffield Hallam, who was heading up the games course at Sheffield Hallam at the time. And he asked me if he could use the IP, and I agreed. I'm a Sheffield Hallam honorary doctor, and I try to keep some contact with them as well. So I got some guys working on that, and it's sort of they started off, they did a Zool product, and then I think the next year they asked if they could use Hogs of War, and I said yes, and yeah, and it's sort of as I never got to finish the first one, it'd be nice to finish this one.
Yeah.
And I've got a very small team working on it. It's looking great. It's taking a long time, but hey, I'm not going anywhere fast, so we'll get it right and we'll get it out there.
Perfect. Well, thank you for the chat, Ian. It's been amazing. It's always nice to talk to you.
No, pleasure. It's been a long time. So, yeah, let's hope in another 20 years we can have the same conversation.
I definitely hope so.
I'll only be 90 then.
Well, you're looking a lot better than me anyway at your age. So, well, thanks again, Ian. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, look after yourself and take care.
Thanks, mate. You take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.